Hello and welcome to my show, Book Talk. My name is Cody C. Engdahl. I am the author that you know. I'm trying to get better at doing the whole YouTube live streaming, and usually I try to be topical and come up with an interesting topic and perhaps even something kind of clickbaity. I mean, I don't know if I ever get good at that because my heart's not really in being deceptive with things, but I have some general updates on several things going on if you're following along, especially if you're a reader and you're interested in the next book. So we'll talk about that, and we'll also talk about some upcoming public appearances. All of a sudden, I went from it's funny because I used to do a lot of things. I used to have a lot of talks that I was doing at places and a lot of book signings, some of which I kind of let go. Different people coming and going from organizations that would have me, and I don't really like. I'll tell you this: I'm always happy to sell a book to somebody, and I'm always happy to take a um, an opportunity to get out in front of people and to talk about my books and to play my fiddle. But I have a couple rules, and one of which is I don't pay for tables, and I'm not saying that. I'm not trying to be arrogant or anything like that. It's just that for me, the focus of my business is mostly global sales on Amazon. So I'm trying to get people, mostly here in the U.S. and the U.K., but all around the world to buy my books in volume instead of paying $85 to $150 to sit at a table all day and hope that I sell enough books just to, the profit margin is so low. To sell enough books just to pay for the table, let alone my time sitting at it, all day long at a festival, which is fun and I do enjoy it. But the thing is about it is it is work. It is exhausting, it's work I certainly enjoy. But it's like you don't get to enjoy the festival or the event because you're sitting at your table selling books, and sometimes it can get really tiring, especially like it always works the same way. Like I get there, I set up, I sit down, and for the first couple hours, I'm really wondering if it was worth my time to come out. And then for about 2 to 3 hours, like a constant line, talking to like three different people at one time, selling books, taking money, using the my credit card swiper, keeping conversations with multiple people, signing books, taking pictures, documenting everything. It can be pretty stressful. But I'll say this: I love it. So what am I? I sound like a jerk. Like I'm complaining about it. Absolutely love it. But two of the events that they do charge people to have tables, and they usually comp the table to me. But I feel it's very presumptuous for me to do it every year to say, "Hey, you're gonna give me a free table." So I kind of wait for them to come to me, and if like they're like, "Hey, it's not in our budget to hand out tables," and the reason why they give me tables was because I play the fiddle. And sometimes that adds, especially the historical events, like the Civil War stuff, adds to it. And so it's worth it to give me a table because I'll show up, I'll wear a uniform, and I'll play the fiddle, and I add to the experience. But my profit margin on my books on a given day like that isn't big enough to really make it worth it to me. So we'll get into that in a minute. Let's start off with a few uh, important things, some business here. I'm going to share my screen right now. If you are, what is this? Why am I getting notifications? Google Chrome is requesting to bypass the system's private window picker and directly access your screen and audio. All right, well, I'll allow for a month, whatever that means. I don't have time to look at it. I mean, I'm live. All right, here we go. Let me see if I'm still live here. Okay. Okay, good. So it's up. All right. So right now we're running a special in the U.S., and this will run all the way up through Friday the 18th. The Perils of Perryville, which is the second book of my series, is only 99 cents, which is a great deal. It's usually $2.99, so that's what 66.66666% off the regular price. This is just for the digital version of it, and I'll tell you a very interesting thing that I've realized in marketing. There are a lot of experts who are correct who will tell you you should really, if you have a series, you should really market book one and not bother with the other ones. Don't spend any money on marketing the other ones, because what you want to do is get people into the funnel and hope that they read through. But I have found, and I don't know if this will work for everybody, but I find it works for me, especially for my Civil War trilogy. I have all my books are one series, but I can break it up into, like, there's a Civil War trilogy, then a prequel, and then uh, the next book comes after the Civil War, but it's part of the same story. But I'm beginning to have questions about how I'm going to operate how I'm going to manage my series and how I'm going to present it going forward. But we'll get into that in another video. And I have done a little bit one of these videos about, but I'm still kind of up in the air. I have found that when I offer one of the interior books in the series on special, and I write every one of my books as if you haven't read the previous ones, so that if you picked up Perils of Perryville, which is book 2, that even though it continues the story that starts in Rampage on the River, you'll still have everything you need in that book, and you don't necessarily have to have read the first book to understand and enjoy the Perils of Perryville. At least that was my goal. That's my goal with every book I write. And it's a real fine line between writing books that are accessible to new readers, but also keep the readers that have been following along interested. And I kind of think of it this way: there are like you might. It takes me about a year between books. I put a book about every calendar year, so I figure, well, I'll write just what you need to know or remember to understand what's going on in the plot of the next book, without bogging down the people who've read the previous stuff with stuff they already know, and without doing an info dump on the new reader. If there's a fine line of doing that. But anyway, what I have found is that if I put one of the interior books of my series on special, and I advertise it on both Amazon and Facebook, and Facebook ads are expensive, I find that a lot of times people will see that book 2 is only 99 cents, and they say, okay, well, this whole thing looks good, and then they just buy the whole series. So they buy book 2, and at the same time they buy at least book 1, sometimes book 3, 4, and 5, all at the same time, and the other books at full price. It's really quite an interesting concept, because when I advertise book 1, I do all right. Sometimes I don't make my advertising money back because the book's only 99 cents. So I'm barely making the money back for the money I spent on advertising. But the idea is that hopefully they'll keep reading through. And so you don't see that immediately, but over time. And that's kind of like the whole theory about writing series as an author, is that you're hoping that you're building a reader for life who is going to end up reading through all your books and paying for them and all that. So that's kind of the idea behind that. So anyway, 99 cents all the way through October the 18th. And then for my beautiful British friends, we're going to run it for 99 pence in the UK. Let me play up my calendar here. And that will be out, let's see, put it in my view. The UK special will be starting on the 19th, which is next Saturday, and run through the 25th. So there's an opportunity to read one of my books for only 99 cents if you're a Kindle reader. Now, I'm going to tell you something. Um, good Kindle is going to cost you around $100. And so that is quite uh, um, investment. And I will say that I enjoy reading on a Kindle. I almost like it better than reading a real book because it's light. You can carry it with you easier. You can load other books on it. When you finish with one book of a series at like 11:23 on a Monday night, you can go and download the next book right then. You don't have to wait to have it shipped to you or go to the library to get it. You can have it immediately. And you can have, when you go on vacation, you can just bring your Kindle and you can have like tons of books on the ready to go. I now read mostly on my phone. And the reason why is because I like to read, the nights that I spend with Laura, she usually falls asleep before me and then I wake up early in the morning. So I spend a lot of time in bed with her sleeping, and having the light on just doesn't really work. So I have the Kindle app that I can read, and that's what it looks like here. So I can read novels on my phone. Now I would prefer to read them on my Kindle, but the style I have isn't lit, so you still have to have a light on to read. And so this is not as easy on the eye as a Kindle, but it does work. If you notice, they have like the soft background, the black against the soft background. Let me see. So you're not getting all that glare that you get from reading a black and white image that's harsh on the eyes. But so because I'm always working on reading a novel, I want to be able. I guess all that to say is I've been reading almost exclusively on my phone now. The novel I'm reading right now is a print novel, but and the reason why is because I can take this everywhere, and it's at one point I was going back and forth, like I was reading on the Kindle, but then reading on my phone when I needed to. But it's kind of a pain in the butt to go back and forth to find where you were. I mean, sometimes because of the cloud, it'll sometimes they will talk to each other. So if you've been reading on your phone and you pick up your Kindle, the Kindle will pick up where you were, and vice versa, but not always. And so I'm just kind of like, all right, screw it, I'm just gonna read on my phone. So, all that to tell you is that if you want to read one of my books and you want to get that 99-cent deal, and you're new to Kindle reading, you can get the app for free on your phone or on your laptop or your tablet or your desktop or whatever. It's free because they want to sell you books. So they give you the app for free. And so you don't need a designated Kindle. It's better on a Kindle. I will say it's better reading experience on a Kindle. But if you just want to down and dirty, I want to read this book and I don't want to invest in more devices, you can read it right on your phone like I do. So anyway, 99 cents. There's that. All right. So today we'll take that down. Friday, I hit a milestone. So I finished part 3 of my novel. And my first novel was just one part. It was a straight story, beginning to end. And then I started experimenting with having parts or acts. And I think The Perils of Perryville was in 2 parts. There was part 1 was, I think, called Corinth, and part 2 was called Perryville. I think that's what it was. I can't remember. And what's interesting about it is, unlike a lot of people, most authors that I read today just number they do write in parts, but they don't name their parts, and they don't name their chapters either. I name all my chapters and I name my parts because I think it's just another way of interjecting a story and some creativity in it. So usually my chapter titles, I like to make them kind of riddles. I mean, not like anything too difficult to figure out, but kind of a mystery. So like, for example, chapter 25 is called Breakfast with Bismarck. and chapter 23 is called The Mousetrap, the Chamber Pot, and the Last Cartridge. And you're like, well, what does that mean? Well, you read it and then you understand why it's called The Mousetrap, the Chamber Pot, and the Last Cartridge. And it's like, oh, that's clever. So I try to do little clever things with that. And I think the reason why I do is, writing to an audience, it's an exercise in psychology. Like, I really do think that the key to writing good novels and good stories is people say this all the time, or this is an old saying, and something I took to heart a long time ago. People will forget what you say. They might even forget what you do, but they will never forget the way you make them feel. And so to me, when I write a novel, I'm trying to take you on an emotional journey, and I want to make you laugh at sometimes. I want to make you cry. I want to make you scared. I want to make you feel excited and exhilarated. I want to take you through heavy emotional context. And so I feel like when you put a title to your chapter, it's intriguing, and it makes the reader want to read more, because they want to read, well, why is this called that? Why is this called The Mousetrap, the Chamber Pot, and the Last Cartridge? And so it gives them more. Does that make any sense? It gives them kind of an impetus to keep reading, because they want to know, well, why is it called that? So I play that game a lot. So chapter 23 is called that. Chapter 24 is called The Last Charge, because it features the last big charge that France, the French attempt at the Battle of Sedan. And then after that, I was going to call chapter 25 The Last Emperor, but I decided to call it Breakfast with Bismarck. And you might be like, well, why is it called Breakfast with Bismarck? Especially because the chapter picks up after the French last cavalry charge, and the emperor is bearing witness to it. And then it takes his story from that point and talks about his experience with the finale of the Battle of Sedan. And it's the last chapter, part 3. And the way I structure books are, I think of the parts as books into themselves. Like, each part is a novella that has its own arc, it has its own plot. I mean, it's all part of a larger plot, but it has its own story and plot and climax and denouement, and then you start the next part. So part 1 is called The Affair. And once again, when you get my book, you're like, oh, this is called The Affair. Why is it called The Affair? And actually what I did is chapter 1 is really a prologue, but I had heard from the experts that you don't title it prologue, because some people don't understand what that means, and they skip it because they think they get the word prologue confused with preface, or what's the other one? There's prefaces and forwards. They think a prologue should be, to me, a prologue is like a little bit of an introduction to your story with a little mini pre-story that helps. But if you set it off as a prologue, sometimes people don't understand that, and they skip it and they go to chapter 1. So I'm now making my prologue chapter 1. And some of the prologue of this book starts in Mexico. And you'll see why. It makes sense for the whole thing, but it starts in Mexico. A book that's about the Franco-Prussian War in Europe of 1870 starts in 1867, I think, Mexico. And it'll make sense. So that's chapter 1, called The Death of an Empire. And then after you read that first chapter, then you see part 1, The Affair. And then you go into chapter 2, and that's where the story proper picks up. But you need to have read that first chapter, because what happens in that first chapter is going to come back around into the story as we get deeper. And then, so part 1 is called The Affair. It has a climax, it has a whole lot of OF moments, as things get things get out of control and get crazy, and it's got a climax, and actually, now I think about it, is it 5 parts? Because there's the affair, and then the next, I think it's 5 parts. Yeah, I think I just finished part 4, because part 1 is called the affair, part 2 is called atrocities, which so part 1, the affair, is leading up to the beginning of the war, and then part 2, atrocities, is the beginning of the war and a lot of the beginning combat and the main character's new problem that he's dealing with and issues, and then um and then that has a he's screwed, everything's going crazy, has a big climactic moment, and then part 3, which is called Mets, and it's the story of the character after the climax of part 2, what happens when it goes to Mets, and all the things that deal with that. And then I think part 4, I think I'm right about this, and then that has its own climax, and then you start part 4. You know what? I'm gonna have to look, because now I can't. I mean, I've been writing this for 6 months or 7 months, so it's hard to keep track of. I need to look at this. Is it four? Is it 4 parts or 5 parts? But after Mets is, I believe, part 4, which is the Battle of Sedan, which is what I just finished. I'm opening up the master document that has the majority of the book, and everything's super slow because I'm streaming right now. All right, let's see here. Ebook, The French Fiasco. I'm gonna see for certain. I think it's 4 parts. I think you have chapter 1, the death of an empire, and then part 1, the affair, part 2, atrocities, part 3, Mets, part 4. Okay, here we go. Yes, okay. I finished writing part 4 on Friday, and there's going to be 5 parts to this novel, and so part 4 is called the Battle of Sedan, but it's all the lead up to the Battle of Sedan, and then the Battle of Sedan, and the denouement, which is kind of like what happens in chapter 25, which is called Breakfast with Bismarck. And it's once the main character's kind of arc in that whole storyline about the Battle of Sedan is over, and he's about to start the next part of the adventure, because Emperor Louis Napoleon III is in the book quite a bit and becomes a character. So I wanted to give him a good send off, and I'll give you just a little clue of what it's like. Oh, I got a message here. Let me see. This might be okay. That's my friend Lloyd. I was going to have him on to see if he want to talk about his new book, but we might do that another time. So what was I saying? Yeah. So I finished chapter 25, which is part 4 of my novel, on Friday. We are currently sitting at let's see, 79,900 and let's see if I can find that. We are I'm all over the place. All right, hang on a second. Hold on. Okay, yeah. We are sitting at 79,906 words. My goal was to bring the book in at around 80,000 words. So, I'm 84 words away from being 80,000 words, but my goal wasn't to be at least 80,000 words. It was to be at 80,000 words or close to it. I'm starting part 5. I have to make a lot of decisions of how much I wanted. I mean, there's definitely a story that I want to tell in part 5. It's the story that is really the whole reason why I'm writing this book. It's the most important part of the whole book to me. I don't know how much I need to because it's not only going to finish off this novel, but it's also going to wrap up some threads that have been going through the whole series. So I don't know how much I'm going to how elaborate I'm going to let that be. Um, uh, so I have to think about it. Can I do it within? I mean, it's going to be more than a chapter. So my chapter is about 3,000 words. So can I do it in 10,000 words? I doubt it. Maybe. I mean, I'd like to keep the book under 100,000 words for sure. I mean, 80,000 was my goal, and once I start editing, I might take a reaping sickle. But it depends on how elaborate I want Part 5 to be, and if I decide to do some of the things I want to do, I might have to go back into the earlier part of the books and insert some things to make it make sense. So we'll see. I'm not going to really worry about that until at least Monday, because right now what I'm doing is I'm working on editing chapter 25, and that's kind of how I work, by the way. So I write, I'll write a chapter, and every time I sit down and write, I read what I wrote last session, and then to kind of get myself into the mood and the voice and where I was going, and then continue on from there. And when I reread what I read in the last session, I do some spot editing right there and then. And then when I finish a chapter, I do several bouts of editing that chapter. So I do a lot of editing as I go, and I know there's some debate about the value of that. Some people say just write the whole thing. Just write and worry about it later. I don't like doing that, because if I've been making a mistake, or if I've been leaving something out, or I don't like the direction, there's a lot of work to do to fix it, and I'd rather have it closer to being what I want by the time I finish the rough draft, so that the editing process is faster and easier, that I pretty much have the book in concept. I'm not doing structural or developmental editing. I'm just mostly cleaning it up, fixing typos, weeding out unnecessary adjectives and adverbs, taking, adding lines that make sense, or taking things out, that kind of stuff. So that's where we are now. I'm editing chapter 25, and when I do it, then I'll add it to the master copy, and then I need to update the sources, because I put all my sources at the end of the book, and I need to update what I call the historical note. So as I write things that are tied to, I try to keep my books very tied to the real history, so that when you read my books, when you finish reading my book, The French Fiasco, not only are you going to have a good, entertaining story about my character and his adventure, but everything that you read about the actual war and the battles and the historical characters like Otto von Bismarck and Emperor Louis Napoleon III, those you should be confident that you know the real story about those people. Like chapter 25 is really me novelizing Louis Napoleon's day at the Battle of Sedan, and how that day works out for him, and how it ends. But once I do that, then I'm gonna start writing part 5 in chapter 26, and I know how I want to start it. I know which character I'm going to start with, and I know what I want, how it to, I know how I want it to. I know where I want the climax to be, and kind of how it ends, and I just have to kind of connect it all. And one of the things about writing is I think that you can only plan so much, but most of the magic happens when you start actually doing it. Like it's like being a sculptor, and you have a big block of marble, and you're looking at it, and you can kind of see what the statue is going to look like once you chisel it away. But it's really not going to start taking form until you start getting your chisel and your hammer and you start working on it. And, painting too. I think they do a little sketching. But I believe in first of all, they talk about pantsers and plotters, and I I don't believe in a binary world where you are one or the other. I think that with all things, um, you're you're not one thing or the other. You're on a continuum. So plotters are people who plot out the entire book, sometimes very elaborately, with outlines and character descriptions and all that. And then so writing the book is just fleshing out the outline. Some people are pantsers where they just start telling a story and they let it go in whatever direction they want to go. There are pluses and minuses for both of those approaches. You know, they say that plotters tend to have more satisfying stories and plots, but sometimes things seem contrived because they're trying to make the story fit their plot, um, than to let things happen organically. They say pantsers usually write great characters because they allow their characters to kind of decide the way the story goes. But sometimes they don't have satisfying endings because they just kind of write off and they write themselves into corners, basically. So I believe myself to be on the continuum between the two, but closer to the plotting side than the pantsing side. So usually when I start a novel, I know how I want it to begin. I know how I want it to end. And I know that the things I want to have happen in between. And so I kind of make a rough outline of the beginning and the plot points along the way. But then I allow myself excuse me, I allow myself to surprise myself that a lot of things that are in my books, all my books, are things that I made decisions as I was writing, that so that in the end, what I end up publishing is different from my original idea. Now, not completely. The basic is still there, but things happen that I didn't really plan for until I started writing. I go, oh, this is great. I really like this. Or, I create a character that I feel like I need, and then that character becomes more and more important. So I think that the Goldilocks, and I really do believe in the Goldilocks of things, is to have a basic idea of where you're going and how you're going to get there and how you're going to start, how you're going to get started, what road you're going to take, the places you're going to visit along the way, and how you're going to end it. But allow yourself to surprise yourself and to develop maybe even a better story than you imagined as you're writing. And I'll tell you something else. A lot of guys, especially guys who are commercial authors, that they have to put out like 2 books a year, and they have to do lots of word count, and so they have to put in 2,000 words a day or whatever. I feel like they don't get time to really let things foster in their heads. And I write slow and steady. I'm kind of like the tortoise winning the race, because I write a minimum of 500 words a day. That's what I try to do, which doesn't seem like a whole lot. But a lot of the writing takes place in between, and stretching out the writing. I start a scene and then I stop for the day. I come back the next day and things have changed in my head. And now it's better because I've taken my time with it and I've thought about it. I think about when I'm driving or I'm taking a shower or going for a walk. And so I feel like for me, with the creative process, I need time to let things develop. Could I do cookie cutter action adventure books and whip them out, crank them out because I have a publisher and agent and deadlines? Yeah, I could do that if I had to. But right now I have the luxury of I really work for just me. And so first of all, I don't have to sell my creative to anybody. I can make those decisions myself. And I can take my time with it. And my pace is, like I said, I'm trying to have a book out every year is basically the pace I'm going. Sometimes it takes a little longer. I think one of my books took 18 months. I think that was Mexico, my love. Um, I don't want to go more than 2 years. I never want to be shorter than 6 months, and I probably will never do a book in 6 months. I could write a rough draft in 6 months, but everything else, no, it'll take time. And just so you know, Rampage on the River took me, I think, 8 months, 8 or 9 months from starting to publishing. So that's basically where I am with the French Fiasco. We're starting part 5, chapter 26. I don't know if it's going to be 10,000 more words, 20,000 more words, 40,000 more words. I'm hoping it's not. I think that once you get past 80,000 words, you need to start bringing it in. I think the readers appreciate a not too short of a book, but something around 80,000 words, I think, is the right part. You know, you get over that, you start getting over 100,000, you're like, how much longer is this book going to be? You need to land the ship. So that's what we're doing. My goal, I'll tell you this. I want to do 2 months worth of pre-orders so that Amazon will put out an email for me to my followers and follow me on Amazon if you would. And better yet, down below is a link to my my email list, and there I will email you when something's on special, or when I'm putting something out, or if I am going to make a public appearance. And we'll talk about some of those public appearances because I have some of those coming up too. But I think you have to have about 60 days worth of pre-orders in order for Amazon to send an email to your list, to not your mailing list, that's your own, but your followers on Amazon, because you know every author has an Amazon authors page, and you can follow your favorite authors. Now, some authors are in absentia. They don't. I mean, I follow Alexander Dumas. He's been dead for 150 years. But maybe not that long. Close, yeah, probably about that long. But some are very active on their with their author pages. I am, but they don't allow me to access or reach out to the my followers. So I just have to hope that when I have a book on pre-order, that they email those people, and that Amazon also lets them know when the book is out. So they didn't do that with the Prussian Prince. And I have my theory of why they didn't do it, which I understand. I mean, I'll just say it's because there are 19th century Prussian military iconography on it. Unfortunately, the same iconography was co-opted by the bad guys of World War II. So I think that the algorithm saw it as bad guys of World War II propaganda stuff, and so they didn't put out those emails. I think that's what happened. So 2 months of that. My goal has always been to get the book out early next year in 2025. I got the Prussian Prince out in February. I tried to do it on my birthday. I missed and got it on a day before my birthday, I think. And the reason I don't want to do it earlier is because I don't believe, I mean, the best time to put a book out, unless you're super famous and have a super following, the best time to put a book out is as soon as it's ready. Put it out, start writing the next one. Start making that money back immediately. There's no point in trying to be strategic or cute with the date. I have tried to get my birthday, and I haven't quite, but that's only because it was natural for it to come out right around that time anyway. But it's not a good idea to put out a book, I would say, between Thanksgiving and Christmas. And you might say, well, Cody, but it's the Christmas holiday, people might be buying your book for gifts for other people. No, unless you're super famous and you have readers that tell their spouses and their loved ones how much they love your writing. And I have had people literally buy my books as gifts, as birthday, anniversary, and Christmas gifts to their partners. In general, people don't really do that, especially for like a relative. Maybe if you're Stephen King or J.K. Rowling or Bernard Cornwell, maybe. So it's really a dead time for book sales because Not a lot of people buy other people books, especially if you're talking like ebooks and things like that during the Christmas season. Also, people don't have a lot of time to do reading because they're all, it's the end of the year. So they have all the things they have to get done at work because it's the end of the year. They're buying Christmas presents. They are going to parties. It's hard for them to make time. Um, but the magical thing is, even though the month of December is not good for book sales, January 1st is excellent for book sales because a lot of people got, like Amazon gift cards. And a lot of people have made resolutions that they're going to read more this year. And not only that, they just spent a crazy month between, the build up to Thanksgiving all the way through the new year of just being crazy, of having to be at a million places and buying Christmas presents and going to parties and seeing your kids' Christmas play and all that kind of stuff. Now things are slowing down and they can relax and it's time to read a book. So this is a great time to have your book out. I want to have at least 2 months of pre-orders. We'll see. I definitely, once I get the rough draft done, I need at least 30 days. And I think actually 2 months is a good enough time to really do a good job at editing. Editing's faster than writing for sure. But for sure, I'm going to be at, this is one of those things I told you about where they comped me a table and they contacted me and said, hey, we'd love to have you back this year. So I'm like, yes. I didn't want to be presumptuous by asking for it, but I'm going to be at the Mid-South Military and Civil War show at the Landers Center in New Haven or South Haven, Mississippi. This is just south of Memphis. So it's right. Memphis is in Tennessee. Memphis is the very southwestern corner of Tennessee. And right over the river is Arkansas. And I don't know if there's a river, but right across the border is Mississippi. So in fact, I usually stay in Memphis when I do it. So they have invited me back and they've comped me a table. I'll be there for 2 days, March 7th and 8th. I'll stay the night. I'm going to try to get Laura to come with me so we can go have some ribs and go watch some blues downtown Memphis. Memphis is to the blues what Nashville is to country music. And Beale Street in Memphis is to Memphis what Broadway is to Nashville. So you go to Nashville, you go to Broadway, you're a tourist. Go to Broadway, it's full of honky tonks. You want to hear live country music and drink beer and see girls walking around in crop tops and cowboy boots and booty shorts in 32 degree weather in December. That's where you go. If you want to go eat ribs and listen to live blues, go to Memphis, go to Beale Street. I've performed on Beale Street, by the way, at the Blues Hall with a blues band. It was a jug band. We played like old blues and jazz from the early 20th century. That was a blast. So I'm going to be there. So please, if first of all, join my email list because I'll let you know. I'll give you details. And I'll also put those details out more when we get closer to it on all my social media. So I'll put it on my, I'll send an email out to everybody. I'll put it on my social media. I'll probably do one of these. But if you're ever like, hey, Cody, you just, reach out to me through the social media, call me, text me, email me, whatever. Say, hey, you said you're going to be at this thing. When is that? Where is that going to be? I'll let you know because I always want to help people come out and see me. All right, let's talk about some of the things I am going to do. I'm going to open up this here. So I have a gig. I'm really happy about this because I should tell you guys, because I shouldn't leave you in the air about some things. As some of you may know, I was living with my father for a while down in Florida because he was in hospice. And I was there to hold his hand as he crossed over. And stubborn old guy. He didn't die. He got better. Some people say that I fed him back to health. I don't know if I'm going to take that much credit or not, but let's see this. I'm going to share my screen here again. There's something I want to show you. Okay, here we go. So this is my Facebook page. So anyway, long story short, I was down in Florida for several months taking care of my father until he got to the point where he could take care of himself again. And while I was down there, and I was happy to do it. First of all, I love my father, so it was good, good to spend time to him and really get to know him. I've gone to visit him several times over the years as an adult, but I haven't really. But to live with him again for the first time since I was like in my preteens, um, and and really just get to know him again. It was great. So anyway, my father lived, but while I was down there, I was homesick. I wanted to come home, and I felt like my life was put on hold. The one of the good things about being there was that it gave me time to write, and so I got up every morning at 5 o'clock in the morning and started writing until my father got up. Because usually once my father got up, I was busy taking care of him. And because of that, and because I was kind of like captive down there, I needed it to make sense. And so it drove me to write, and I wrote the French Fiasco faster than I've written any book, which I'm very happy about. But one of the things I when I was down there was I used to play fiddle quite a bit. I had my own band. I played in other bands. I gigged a lot, and that kind of went away. A lot of it's my own fault. Like I let my band kind of fall apart. It's down to just Paul and me, which I actually like it that way. It's now a duo instead of a band. It's me on fiddle and Paul on banjo. But even Paul and I, like, Paul was getting gigs and saying, "Hey, when are you going to be back?" And I had to say no. Thankfully, my teacher, David Johnson, was able to sit in and do those gigs while I was out. But one of the things I decided I wanted to do is that when I got back, I wanted to get back into the game. And so I got several things coming up here that I'm very excited about. So we'll talk about this here. This is next week. Paranormal Provisions, a frightful farm to table dinner. This is at the Head Farm. There, Tennessee. I love Tennessee, and Tennessee has a lot of people doing what's called agro-tourism. So a lot of people own farms, but people love farms and they love to visit farms. And usually farms are kind of a private thing. They're usually family owned and they're businesses. But some people they have Airbnbs, they have a guest house at the Airbnb, or they have events, or they host things. So the Head Farm is out near Cedar Hill in Tennessee, somewhere between Nashville and Clarksville, a little to the north. And the people who own the farm are really good friends with Paul, and that's our connection there. And we've done a lot of their events. We've done events where they had the 101st, Fort Campbell is not far, and so they've hosted soldiers, and we've come out and played for the soldiers, and they've had all sorts of things. This is kind of like a Halloween event. Paul and I are going to be playing. I play fiddle. Paul plays the banjo, and I think it's $85 a person, but there's a gourmet chef. It's beautiful. It's Tennessee in the fall. It's still plain warm outside. I think it's an outdoor dinner. Here's where you can. We're doing 2 nights, the 17th and the 18th. With the live music, there's going to be ghost stories, great food. I think it's a great date. So I think there's still opportunities to jump in on that. But if you want to, now it's not something where I'm going to be having books out and signing them, because I'm basically the entertainment. But everywhere I go, I keep boxes of books in the back of my car. I always make sure I have at least 10 to 30 copies of every book I've written, except for the 2 nonfiction of the novels. So if you catch me in public, and especially like this, like after the event when everybody's walking away, I I can sell you one out of the back of my car, sign it. I can even take your credit card if you need. All that works out. So you can come see me there. Then the next thing I'm going to do, we'll take that down. This is another one of those things that they would comp me. Well, I'll tell you what happened. When I first started doing, there we go. And am I sharing that? No. Okay, let me share screen. Okay, what's going on here? I think it's going crazy. Window. Okay. Oh, I see. I gotta be patient. Okay. This should pop up here in a second. There we go. My computer's slow. So I love this event. This is one of my favorite events. So this is I've been doing this every fall now for several years. It was called Morgan on the Rim because Morgan was a dashing Confederate cavalry commander, and there was a battle out there that he participated in. So every year they do like there's a reenactment, but when they're not reenacting the battle, they're blacksmiths and there's little stands, and it's just a nice thing to bring your kids out to. And when they first started doing it, they had a writer's cabin, and basically they invited several writers and said, you can come if you're writing Civil War stuff, you can come and have a table and sell your stuff. And so I would come and I'd play the fiddle, and I became part of the show because I play Civil War fiddle tunes, and then I wear my I have a Civil War Union uniform, and I think I did it for like 2 years and for free, and then the city took it over, and the city was charging the authors as vendors. And authors, like I said, it's not really worth it to me to pay for a table to sell books. That the money I would spend to pay for a table, I would rather spend that on Facebook ads and Amazon ads. I mean, it's a business thing. It's just if I have to pay for the table, it's not. I mean, I'm willing to spend a whole day out there and make only like a couple $100. And I have to buy my own. I have to pay for my books. I get them at wholesale and then sell them. So even when I take in a couple $100, profits only like maybe $100. And we're talking about me getting up early in the morning, going out there, setting everything up, and spending 8 to 10 hours selling books. And you walk away only making with a couple $100, which I'm grateful for. But I guess all I'm trying to say is that when the city took this event over, they wanted me to pay for a vendor's table, and I said, I was very gracious about it. I said, hey, thank you so much for the opportunity. It just doesn't make business sense for me, so I'm gonna have to decline. But the guy who runs the show, Gary Lima, got a hold of me and he says, I'll make this work. Because he understood. I'm a starving artist. I mean, I truly am. I'm barely managing. So Gary pulled some strings and they got me in, where I didn't have to pay for a table. Now, so because of that, I didn't want to make a big deal. So I didn't want to say, hey, can I come back next year? Because I just would think it was very presumptuous if I'm not paying for the table. Well, Gary reached out to me. And I said, yeah, I'd be happy to do it. It's just so long as I don't pay for table. He's like, no problem. They moved it to Springfield. And that's why they changed the name. So instead of Morgan on the Ridge, it's Morgan Returns. No problem for me. I don't have to pay for my table. The other thing, too, is that if I have to pay for the table, then I'm going to be on edge all day, desperately trying to at least make my money back. It's going to make me not enjoy myself, and it's going to make me competitive, which I don't like being competitive because there's other authors there and I want to cheer them on and help promote them as well. But if I'm only paying time and effort, then that's fine. And so I can enjoy myself because I'm not so desperate to make the money. I can just kind of kick back and soft sell. And I usually do pretty well at this at this show. On average, I'll sell anywhere between 10 to 20 books a day. And a lot of times people come in, they buy the whole series because I discount it if you buy more than one book. I give you a deal. If you buy 2 books, it's a certain deal. If you buy 3, it's a certain deal. If you buy the whole series, it's a certain deal. That's going to be November 1st and 3rd. I will be in uniform. I'll be playing the fiddle. I'll be there, so you can come talk to me. I'll sign books for you. If you've already bought some of my books and you would like me to sign them, bring them, and I'll sign them. If you want to talk to me about the book you're writing, please do, and I'll be happy to. The one thing I'll say, and I hope you understand this, I don't do this to anybody, and I hope people understand this too. You can ask. You can always ask. It never hurts to ask, but please don't demand that I read your book. I'm sure it's great. I don't ask anybody to read mine either. I only want people who want to read it or read my books. And the reason being is that I am so inundated with books. I have a list. My to-be-read novels, the novels that I'm reading, is about 20 deep right now. And some of them are novels written by my friends, who, by the way, didn't ask me to read them, but I wanted to read them. And, we may be friends, but I may not read your novel because it doesn't fit in. I read for pleasure, but I'm also reading for work reasons. So I read within my genre. So I read, historical novels. And a lot of times, like, for example, I've been reading a lot of historical novels that are written about the Franco-Prussian War. Why? Because I want to rip off their ideas. No, because I want my mind to be in there. So the more I expose myself to the texture of it, how things are, how people talk, what the things they wear, the events, the better focus it comes in. So I use, obviously I use nonfiction reference material. I have several books on the battle. On the war, nonfiction books on the war. I have a book about Louis Napoleon III. I have memoirs from people that were there, all sorts of nonfiction stuff. But I also read the novels to get a taste of it. I've read Emily Zola's book, The Debacle. I read a book by Robert Brightwell, who's a contemporary who I met through the military thriller book club on Facebook. I joined that group. It's great. It's a great place to find books to read and find readers to read your books. There's a lot of readers and writers in that club. Also join the Angle House of Readers and Writers because I post a lot of other people's books there. And my own. So anyway, what was I saying? God, I was going somewhere with this. I can't remember. I ramble. I forget what I'm saying. Let's just move on. So that is November, the early November that I'm doing the Morgan Returns. Then on November the 30th, I am going to be at the Lotes House, and I think this will be the second, I think this will be the third year I've done this. JT always hires me to come out and play fiddle at the memorial, so he has a candle lighting. November the 30th is the anniversary for the Battle of Franklin. It means a lot to me. I mean, of course, because of all the men and women who died in that battle on both sides. But also that battle is featured in my book, Blood for Blood at Nashville. I spent quite a bit of time in that battle. And the Battle of Franklin and the Battle of Nashville, to me, are kind of like my home turf because I live in Nashville, and Franklin is about a half-hour drive from me. So I liked being involved in that. JT has basically got me locked down to doing his memorial every year. I love being a part of it. I love JT and his crew at the Lodes House. If you're ever in Franklin and you want Civil War experience, go to the Lodes House Museum. It was a house that was built about before the war, and it was right in the epicenter of the fighting and the devastation. And it's amazing. The house still bears the scars of, gunfire and cannonballs and bloodstains, but also it's a beautiful house. It was built by a German immigrant. Most of the furniture he built. His daughter became a famous, and he and his daughter are in. They have a cameo in my book, the Blood for Blood in Nashville. So it's a sunset thing because the battle actually took place at sunset. The rebels did a full-on assault on a fortified Union or federal position right there where the Lodes House is, and it happened right at sunset, which is like crazily enough in Tennessee it's like 4:30 and at the end of November. So we light a candle for all the men who died, both the Federals and the rebels, because in the end they're all Americans. And I like being a part of that. And then the next day is another one of my favorite events. It's always the Sunday. I can't remember if it's the Sunday before or the Sunday after. Maybe it's the Sunday before. Maybe it's the previous Sunday. And I'll give this out to you. But there's the Reconciliation March. And so basically what happened was that the rebels came down Winston Hill and marched straight into the fortified federal line, right down which is what is now Franklin Pike. And so what happens is the sons of Union veterans meet at a park in Franklin, and then we in uniform, and then we march to that point where the two armies collided. The sons of Confederates start at Winston Hill and march down, and so we have the ancestors or the descendants of the men. Some of us have ancestors that fought in that battle. Some of us have ancestors that were in the war, but the descendants of the two sides meet at that point where the battle happened, and we all shake hands and hug each other. We all know each other because we're all part of the Civil War, society around here. I bring my fiddle and I play like the rebels love. I always play Dixie for them, and they love when I play like Confederate stuff. And it's just a good thing. It's a good time. There's a lot of people there in costume. And it's a good coming together. It's a nice event because, especially here in the United States, we're going through an election, and we could, to have some unity every once in a while. And to be able to look back at an even worse time for our country, where we were even more divided, and to come together in brother and sisterhood and hug and shake hands and have a laugh and have a good time. It's great. I'm proud to be about that. And I told Laura, I said, I'm gonna participate in this. It's called the Reconciliation March. I'm gonna be part of the Reconciliation March every year I can reasonably do it. So that's November. December 6th. Okay, this is interesting. So, like I said, when I was down in Florida, I want to get back into the game, and I have my own thing, the Inglewood Old Time String Band, which is now just a duo between Paul and me. But I played in a few bands. When I got out of Channel 4, I started. I played in one band. It was a country singer named Davey. Oh, I can't remember his name. Davey Hamilton. And he was a guy who was almost famous, and a guy who had gotten a record deal with Sony and then blew it, and then was trying to make a comeback. And I got hired by the drummer actually. And this guy had all original country tunes, and I came in, I played fiddle for them, and we did one gig. We played at the Gavolt House in St. Louis. And that was supposed to be kind of like an audition to get other work. And I don't know what happened. We went up there. I had a great time. We went up there. We played a set. Um, you know, Davey Hamilton. I mean, his music is pretty good. I mean, I'm not a big country guy, and this is kind of like that pop country, that modern pop country. But it was fun. You know, I played fiddle for him. Did a little guitar playing too, I think. That never went anywhere. I was in a band called. Uh, the concept was better than the execution. It was called. Oh, what was that band called? It was I can't. It'll come to me. It was a guy. Once again, it was a drummer. A drummer reached out to me. um, it was his daughter was the singer, and it was kind of an eclectic band. He was a drummer. Daughter sang. She was really into ska punk. Um, they got a guitar player who was a real rocker. They got a trombone player that was into like funk. They had me that was kind of an old timey fiddle player. They had an upright bass player, and the idea. Oh, the Muscadine Fives was the name of the band, and the concept of the band was that we were a 1940s jump jazz band or jump blues band who found a fake book full of modern pop tunes. And by modern, I mean like pop tunes from the 80s, basically. And so the idea behind the band was we were supposed to be like this people from the 40s playing, using that style, playing 80s music. It never really came off that way. And I feel it's like because everybody was kind of making the band what they thought it should be. You know, we had a guitar player who was always playing too loud with a lot of distortion. We had the singer, her rhythm was very ska. I don't know. I felt like that, and they were kind of tied to the concept. And what we were playing was good, but it just didn't really. It really wasn't. And I was kind of like, you know, I think we kind of should drop the whole Dungeons and Dragons thing and just be what we are. And I don't think the guy who was running the show liked it. And I wasn't getting along with him very well in the end. And so yeah, they kicked me out, and then they collapsed like most bands do. And that was fun. We played one gig. We played, and that went well. We played at what's the name of that bar? It's like the best dive bar in the city. It's near Centennial Park. It'll come to me. I can't think of it though. But if you're from Nashville and you're familiar with the old time Nashville, it's that dive bar that's like right there in the park behind the McDonald's. And I played in a band, the Porter Road Jug Band. Once again, that one, you know, it's funny. I won't go into it, but that one I really enjoyed, and I thought we had potential, but it kind of fell apart in the end. Like a lot bands, I find are like dating. You know, like sometimes you audition and you know like a first date and like yeah no thank you. Sometimes you play a couple of gigs and then you just find that you don't work well with the people or they don't work well with you, and or the band just falls apart for whatever reason. But I wanted to get back into the scene, my own band, but also expand. The way I play old timey music, I'm basically constantly playing the melody, and there's not a lot of room for me to do a whole lot of improvisation on because the style of the music that we're playing doesn't really call for that, and I'm kind of holding it together while my banjo player plays something that's between melody and between rhythm and accompaniment. So anyway, long story short, I got contacted. I have an account on Bandmix, which is kind of like a dating site for musicians. It's how musicians and bands find each other. And it's a project where they're doing kind of like Irish, acoustic Irish rock kind of stuff. And the guy had, it was interesting. I was looking at their site. And apparently, they had been a Beatles tribute band, and now they're moving on to Irish stuff. So I could tell by looking at band mix is a lot like LinkedIn, where you can see like if someone has looked at your site, and you can also see who else they've been looking at. So I think he did a cattle call, and he called out to all these fiddlers. And a couple of weeks ago, I got a message that, hey, we got this band, and this is what we're doing. We need a fiddler. Here's how they get a hold of us. So I wrote back and said, yeah, I'd be interested in doing an audition. I didn't hear from them, and my prediction was, and I believe I was correct. Actually, I'm pretty sure I was correct. I told Laura, I said, I know what's going to happen, because I'll tell you this: I'm a decent fiddler. I'm not a virtuoso. I'm not going to burn the house down. I'm not the best fiddler in the world, but I'm a competent fiddler. I'm a veteran of live performance. I'm very comfortable playing live in front of audiences, whether I'm hiding in the back of a violin section for an orchestra, or on stage playing solos or whatever. I got no problems with it. I'm not going to knock anybody's socks off. I'm not like a virtuoso, but I'm competent. I think they went for the big shots first, and I told Laura, I said, they'll probably go through a few first and then circle back to me. And I started working on some Irish tunes just to kind of get that Irish feel back into my bow. And I was almost going to give up on it. And about 10 days later, after I replied, he replied back to me and said, hey, I'm going to call you if you're still interested, today or tomorrow. I said, sure. So he called me last night, and we talked. Very nice guy. And he said, yeah, we're auditioning several people. And he goes, and we do a lot of gigs, and not everybody can do everything. So it might be where we actually have a few people that are, but if we find the right guy, then we'll probably try to get him more and more integrated into the show. And he kind of has the same concept as me. I think this guy can do a gig all by himself, just him and his guitar, and then adding the other music so you can contract. And I think this is the way to go. If you have a big band where like the Muscadine Fives, that was one of the things. We had a big band with all these people, and trying to get everybody to be able to do a gig together was hard. And some of us, like myself and some of the other musicians, had other gigs and other bands. So if you make your band be, like, for example, my own thing, I can do a gig completely by myself. I can go play a dance, just me with my fiddle. I can keep the rhythm, play the whole thing, and you can do a counter dance to it. I think this guy's the same way. So so basically he goes, we're real informal. We don't really have rehearsals. We just kind of like everybody, you need to work on your stuff. He goes, what we're looking for is, he goes, I play the chords. I just need someone to take the solos. I'm not a soloist, but I'm a singer and a rhythm player. And I said, yeah, that's right up my alley. I mean, usually for me, if it's most kinds of music like rock, blues, country, I can, once I know what key it's in, I can take a solo on a song that I've never even heard before. I've good enough ears to do that. And so basically the audition is, he just wants me to come out to one of their gigs and sit in. And so I didn't want to sound like a big shot when I was talking to him, but it just turned out that every time he had a gig, I had a gig too. It's not like I have a ton of gigs, but it's just what happened. So I'm going to come out and play with him December 6th in Franklin. I'll put out the information when we get close to it. The name of the band is Johnny and the Empty Pints. So it's December 6th. It's a Friday. It's Irishy, and he says that we're probably going to be playing every weekend through March. Perfect. Love it. And I love just getting out and playing. And sometimes you play in a band, and as long as you're not a complete asshole, you always want to be nice to everybody, because you never know what happens later on. So like when I was in the Muscadine Fives, there was a guy who played bass named Rocco. He's awesome, great bass player, nice guy. I have brought Rocco in to play dances, because when I play a contra dance, like most of the stuff that Paul and do, we don't have a bass player for, because bass players, I'm telling you right now, if you play upright bass, in Nashville, you're busy and you're not wasting your time with little things and come do a bunch of rehearsals. So we don't usually run a bass player unless we do the dance. And I insist on a bass player for the dance because you want that. The dancers dance to the bass. So I'm going and Paul's like he's playing back up. But what they're dancing to is the beat from the bass. That's and it pulses and you feel, and a lot of people are like, why do people play bass? You can't hear it. You can hear it. It's everywhere. Listen to rock and roll. Once your ears are tuned to hear the top end of the music. That's why violins and lead guitars and even singers, male singers, most of the famous male singers, especially in rock and roll and metal, have high-pitched voices like King Diamond, because the low-pitched instruments fall into the mix. But when you learn how to listen for the bass, you realize it's the bass that's actually playing the song. The bass player is the one who's driving the music, playing the chord changes, and usually the guitar is just accenting on top of it. So anyway, what I'm saying is that I'm very excited about playing with Johnny in the Empty Pints, and maybe that turns into something big. But even if it doesn't, the people that the people I meet there. So something else, for example, there are times I meet a guitar player. Maybe at some point I say to Johnny, hey, can you come play guitar at the dance? So sometimes we'll get a guitar player to fill in. We've had to do that where Paul couldn't do something. So I need either a guitar or a banjo. It's great to have both, but I usually want to have at least one to fill in the space between. I think at the bare minimum to do a dance, me, the violin or the fiddle player playing the melody, the bass player who's driving the beat and the chord changes, and then the person to fill in the space in between. And that can be a banjo or a guitar as far as I'm concerned. Okay, so that's December 6th. December 7th, I'm going to be playing this is Yule Fest at Massacre Station. Massacre Station is a historic site. It's in Goodlettsville. It's not Civil War. It's post-revolution. It's like late 18th century, like the 1700s. Like Tennessee became a state in 1796, and so Massacre Station was like a frontier fortress that people came to trade. And Tennessee, a lot of people don't realize this. Obviously, it was hunting grounds by the natives before the Europeans came. Tennessee was at one point part of the Spanish Empire. So you had Spaniards up in there, like in the 1500s, early 1600s. At some point, that area was owned by the French. I think Nashville was originally. I'll tell you this: it was a trading ground for the natives, like the Cherokee and the I can't remember all the different kind of natives that are around here. And then the Spaniards used it, the French used it, the English, and the Americans. And so Massacre Station is an old fort for that. And so we do a lot of events there. We're doing what's called Yule Fest. Are we doing a Halloween one there too? Maybe we're not. I'll have to ask Paul about that. But we're doing Yule Fest. So every year, Paul and I, we put aside the old-timey music and we work on Christmas tunes. And we play traditional stuff that Jingle Bells, the first Noel, that kind of stuff. We play fiddly banjo versions of those tunes. And we play that gig. So I'll be doing that. That will be the 7th, and it's great. People come. They serve like hot cider or hot chocolate and Santa Claus there. So the people that play Santa and Mrs. Santa are friends of mine, and they live in Smithville. They have a house there, and this is a really beautiful thing. They open up their house to all the kids in the community, and a lot of these kids are from poor families. A lot of them are Hispanic immigrants, black, poor white kids that live in trailer parks who are never going to get a chance to go to the mall to sit on Santa's lap. So they turn their home into the North Pole. They deck it out, man. It's a beautiful thing. They fill it full of treats and candies. They dress up like Mr. and Mrs. Santa Claus. I come and I play Christmas tunes, and they have elves there helping out. They don't charge any money. Parents come and they take pictures with their kids sitting on Santa's lap. Their iPhone is beautiful. I'm proud of it. It's one of the best things I do all year round. That's on the 14th. That's in Smithville. The only other thing is I used to do the Middle Tennessee Civil War show in the middle of December. And I always got in by the first year I did it. A friend of mine, Rich Relics. He's a trader in like Civil War relics. And he invited me to sit at his table and play fiddle. Then I got in with the Sons of Union Veterans, and I made them a deal. They needed someone to work their table. I said, "I'll work your table if you allow me to play my fiddle and for tips and sell my books." And I said, "Sure." And I did it every year. They made me a member, and I didn't really want to be a member because I'm broke. I'm a starving artist, and I couldn't justify, especially when I had no health insurance, the paying dues to an organization I really didn't need to be a part of. And so the guy who was the post commander pulled some strings to get me in anyway. But now he's gone, and I can't afford to make yearly dues or really spend the time going to the meetings. So I backed out of the group. Now I'm still going to do the march because there's, if you can imagine, in Tennessee, there are more guys dressed up like rebels than there are Yankees. So I always am willing to show up in my Yankee uniform because my ancestors fought for the Union. I don't think it's right for me to ask the new commander, hey, can I sell my books at your stand? I don't think it's appropriate. I'm going to talk to JT, and he can say no, that's fine, but I think he'll say yes. He has a table at that show as well. And usually he sends one of his employees there, an employee that he needs at the museum because they're tour guides at the museum. And I'm going to offer him when I do the memorial, it's like, hey, if you like, I will set up and run your table all weekend long. All I ask is that I can play my fiddle for tips and sell my books there. And he might say, no. Or he might say, yeah, perfect. Because then I'll free up one of his guys to stay at the museum and work there. And then we talked about this the first weekend in March. Once again, this is one of those shows where I would have had to pay for a table. But they have been comping me all these years because I play the fiddle and I help, the Civil War ambiance. So they reached out to me again and said, hey, we'd love to have you back. We have a table for you. And I didn't want to be presumptuous by asking for it. So they offered, and I said, yes. I'm very excited about this. So I think I was going to say this earlier, because I ramble and I don't get to all the things I want to say. My goal with, so last year, I'll say that the Prussian Prince came out February 4th, and then I had a box of them ready to go when I went to the show last year. This year, or actually next year, my goal, absolutely, no excuses. The French Fiasco will be published, and I will have a box of them ready to go March 7th to 8th, 2025 to sell the show. Not only that, but I have a Civil War uniform and I love it. sometimes I feel like I put myself at a disadvantage because there's a lot of people, especially ones that are kind of pro-Confederate, to still be have some emotional hangups about the war. To me, it's just like something that happened in history and whatever. Um, my ancestors fought for the Union, and nothing against your ancestors if you fought for the Confederacy. But sometimes I feel like it's hard to sell a book to a guy who is, super pro Confederate. So my last two books, my last book is about the Austro-Prussian War and now Franco-Prussian War. I have the Pickelhaube, the helmet, the spike. I think for $170, I can get a 19th century Prussian uniform jacket. I think that for my birthday, I'm going to get myself one of those jackets. And so when I go to this, I'm going to not dress up as a Union soldier, but I'm going to dress up as a Prussian. And the reason why I'm not doing it beforehand, well, Morgan Return, that is specifically a Civil War show. And they're giving me a free table. And so I don't think it's right for me to do anything other than Civil War. So I'm going to show up in my Civil War garb. And they got plenty of guys dressed as rebels. They need Union guys to make them. And usually I get asked to come out and be one of the people that the rebels shoot. So I'll probably participate in the reenactment as well. But the one in March, that's a military history and Civil War show. So anything goes. And in fact, there are guys there that sell Pickelhaubes, the spiked helmets, and they sell World War II stuff, Vietnam stuff. It's all, and there's a lot of Civil War, but everything is there, all warfare. So I'm very excited about that. That gives me something to kind of a pinpoint, like I must have my books done. I would say it's got to come out by the beginning of February, because when you order the books, it sometimes takes like 10 days to 2 weeks. So just to make sure I have my books and everything's fine, I got to have the book out by the beginning of February. No fail. And I think I can do that. That should be no problem. And then that's it that I know so far. I will let you know as things come up. I'm very excited about. I might be playing a lot, especially in March. Playing, the fiddle stuff. So I'll keep you updated. If you follow, first of all, if you follow me on all my social media, I'm always updating about things that are coming up or what's going on. If you get on my email list, I will be updating. I don't overdo it. I don't email just for the sake of email. I don't do like a newsletter and full of fluff. I can't stand that. I follow several other authors. Some are really great that, like me, they just stick to business. Some want to tell you everything that's going on in their life. I'm doing that here. But yeah, join my email list and I'll keep you up to date, and I won't flood your inbox with a bunch of stuff. Couple things. So my dad didn't die. That's great. He's still alive. We're going to see whether we go there. This is the first year that Laura and I may be able to travel for Thanksgiving. Laura's mother has deteriorated very quickly. It's very sad. She's alive, but the person that we knew is gone. She a lot of times doesn't even know that Laura's her daughter. She doesn't know what day it is or whatever. And this has caused a couple of things. The big thing that happened is where she was at assisted living, they basically said she's got to go. She needs memory care. We no longer do memory care. You need to move her to a facility. We did, which the great news is the facility that we moved to her is literally across the street from Laura's condo complex. So Laura can walk over there and check on her mom. Laura's mother had a cat, a 14-year-old cat named Lacey, who's very shy, who I've rarely ever seen because she's like, if I showed up at the house, she would go run and hide. Well, now Lacey's living with me, and she's hiding right now, but she's getting better every day, and she's even let me pet her a couple times. So we're beginning to bond. So now Laura and I have two cats. At some point when I get a chance, I'll take a picture of Lacey I think she's a long hair Siamese. She's got blue eyes. She's got a very interesting looking coat. She doesn't look like a regular Siamese, but she looks different from. She's not a tabby, that's for sure. She has kind of a longer snout, blue eyes, longer hair, kind of a light tan color. Um, and she is very sweet when she's not being skittish. So I have a cat. But the other thing is, because now Laura's mom doesn't really understand holidays, and she just really gets kind of upset when we try to do something with her, like bring her over for dinners, and she doesn't know what's going on, doesn't know where she is. She gets upset. It's not a good experience for her. So for the first time since Laura and I have been dating, Laura is open to traveling for Thanksgiving. And I have family in Detroit. I have family all over the world, but my mother and my sister, actually my mother and all three of my sisters. Well, I have three sisters that live in Michigan, and then I have kind of stepsisters. Our parents were married, then got divorced. My mother remarried, divorced that guy, and then went back to their dad, but they never got remarried again. I have one that lives down in Florida. She's really sweet, and I still consider her a sister. But anyway, we might go up to Michigan for Thanksgiving. We might go down to Florida, or we might just stay put. We don't know yet. The other thing is, speaking of Michigan, I had this idea last year, and I didn't do it because my father. I had to go to Florida, and I spent several months. I started going to Florida like right around April or May, going down, and then it got to the point where I just had to move in and take care of him. And so I was living with my father till like mid-August, and then I finally came back, and he's been fine ever since. But my Civil War trilogy is about Michigan troops, and Michigan does have its own Civil War culture, and there are forts where people were trained, and 19th century forts, and there are groups in it. But what I've always wanted to do is take a month, go stay with my mother. She lives in Milford, which is like about 45-minute drive from downtown Detroit, and just book as many things as I can do. Just get a hold of every single Civil War roundtable and Sons of Union veterans and museums and things like that, and say, can I come and do my talk? I'll do a brief history of Civil War through fiddle tunes. Everybody loves it, and sell books, and just do a Michigan book tour. And spend like a month there. It just depends on how everything's going. Like I have a job, but it's a part-time job that I kind of, they want me to get a certain amount of work done on a weekly basis, but other than that, I kind of pick when I work and how I work and all that, and that just kind of like helps supplement from the books and playing the fiddle and all that. So we'll see where I am in the summer, but I would like to go up to Michigan like during the month of July and see how much I can do in a month, and how much I could just getting out there, because every time, the more, it's all about building a readership, because by the time I write book 20, hopefully like I have, tens of thousands of people who are pre-ordering the books. And I'm on my way. I'm every book I put out, it gets a little better. Every pre-order session does better than the last one. So we got that. Reading. So if you've been following me, you know that I read other people's novels and I do reviews. And what I usually do is I do a review. I put it on Amazon and Goodreads. And then I do my own blog posts, and I share that everywhere. And I do a video. Sometimes my lives are my reviews. I only do the reviews for contemporary living authors who could use the publicity. And I always give them 5-star reviews. If it's a bad book, I just won't review it. I just will be quiet about it and won't say anything. Sometimes I'm reading novels that are from people who are passed away. Or just kind of so far out of the genre, it doesn't make sense for me to review it. I like to read horror in October. I love horror. Horror is kind of like my original genre. Back when I was when I was in junior high school, I wrote like fantasy adventure stories, and then I started writing horror as like kind of a gothic punk teenager, and when I was in college. I do love horror. I love horror movies. I love horror books and the ghost stories. So I have a thing where I try to read those kind of books in October. So I have read. I read the Hellbound Heart, which is the Clive Barker novella that Hellraiser is based off of. I was surprised, but see, I'm not going to do a review on that here because it doesn't fit in with what I do. It's too far off brand. It's too far off a genre for me to do it. So I'm not going to review those books. I wrote a little thing for Amazon just to help them out, or Goodreads, but I'm only going to do the reviews if they're like living authors and it's my genre. Let's put it that way. I'm reading The Ring. Which I'm really enjoying. So if you've seen the movie The Ring, that's the one where they watch the tape, and the tape looks like a kind of like a college art film, and then you get a phone call and it's 7 days, and like in 7 days this girl's gonna crawl out your TV and kill you. I thought that was a great movie, and then I found out that movie was a remake of a Japanese movie. So I saw the American movie. I saw the Japanese. I might have seen the Japanese movie first, actually, because I was living in Japan at the time. Well, now I'm reading the book that the Japanese movie was based off. So it was a novel. It's a Japanese novel written by a Japanese man that takes place in Japan. That became a Japanese movie that takes place in Japan. That became an American movie. So I'm reading that now. And then once I get done with that, I'm finishing The Frontiers, which is a novel that was written in the late 19th, like shortly after the Franco-Prussian War. The author is dead, so I'm not going to be reviewing it anywhere. I do like reading the novels of the people that actually lived during the period because it's even more authentic than reading someone like me who's writing 150 years later. And then there's one more Franco-Prussian novel I'm going to try to read. It's a book that was written in the 70s called The Falkenhorst, but the only way I can read it is to actually buy a print copy. And so I think I'll break down. Once I finish that, I should be done with my novel, my own novel. So I'll be done with reading Franco-Prussian stuff. When I'm done with the novel, I'm going to, usually I give myself 30 days from publishing to writing the next one. The very first thing I'm going to write is a novella that's going to be exclusive to my email list. So if you want to read this, join my email list and you'll get a digital version of it. It's right now the working title is The Underground Railroad Ball, and it's a prequel to Rampage on the River, and it's a marketing thing. So basically, I learned that if you want to be a successful author, especially an independent author, you really need to build your own email list because you can only depend so much on advertise. It's very expensive to advertise on Amazon, advertise on Facebook, but you own your own email list. So if you build a list of dedicated readers that want to know when your stuff come out, that's how you do it. And one of the ways you entice people to join your list is by offering them a freebie. And so I've heard that you should write a short story or a novella that's connected to your series, but not essential to read. And so I knew I needed to I knew I needed to start my email list. And that was kind of my resolution for this year. So I started it earlier in the year, and it's been going. It's fine. I mean, I'm still building. I got a long ways to go, but I got a decent amount of people on it now. But the next step is to offer this as a giveaway to them. I was like, just getting the list started was enough for me. And I couldn't think of what I would write that would that would fit this. And then the idea came to me, and I'm like, this is a great idea. I'm actually really excited about it. It's really hard not to put it out as an actual novel into itself because I think it's going to be really good. But I'm going to be disciplined with this. But it's basically, if you've read Rampage on the River, it's basically the events that lead up to the beginning of Rampage on the River. So, and there's a character in the trilogy named Chester E. Newman, who I plan to bring back in later books, by the way. That's probably the first time I've said that publicly. But it's going to be his story. He is a sheriff's deputy in Detroit. He's also trying to get his captaincy in the 2nd Michigan Cavalry. And the way they did it back then to become an officer is you had to recruit your own company. And so he's trying to recruit a company and trying to get in good with the powers that be. Meanwhile, there is the Fugitive Slave Act. It was a law passed by Congress that compelled law enforcement in the North to assist slave catchers to catch runaway slaves and return them, much against their will. And so the story is going to be about him mixed up with trying to catch a slave and return them to their, the Southern slave catchers. And dealing with his own crisis of conscience. And also, he doesn't want to screw up because he doesn't want to screw up his chance of being a captain in the 2nd Michigan. And all this is happening while a ball is being thrown for the kids that are dropping out of college to go back to, the South to fight for the fight in the war. And if you read Rampage on the River, you'll understand this because there's a little bit of this. And we meet Chester E. Newman in the first chapter. So basically, there's going to be a story about him dealing with a runaway slave and slave catchers that's going to take place right up to the point of basically Carl and Klaus's duel is where this story is going to end. But it's going to be it's going to be Chester's story up to that point. I think it's going to be great. I'm really excited about it. I actually got some AI art of what he looks like. It looks great. I'm very excited about it. That will be my project, the very first thing I do. So it might be a long time before I get another actual book published that I'm selling, because I'm going to do that first. And I'm giving myself like 6 months to do it. So there might not be a book out early into 2026, but there'll be this book that you can get for free. After that, I'm going to write Black James, which if you've read Mexico, My Love, you know who he is. He's a pirate. This is going to be a very different book for me. It's going to be epic. It's going to go back certainly before the War of 1812. It's going to start in Africa. It's going to dip into the War of 1812 and afterwards. And it's going to eventually be about a boy who grows up in Jamaica on his father's shipping dock, dreaming about being a pirate and then ending up going on a big epic adventure. It's going to be a big book. It's going to be epic. It's connected to my series, but it's outside of it in that it's not, I don't know how I'm going to present it, but it's not going to be part of the main sequence. It's going to be kind of an addendum, a side novel, character novel about this person's life and adventure. Once we finish that, I'll get back on track with the main sequence, and then there'll be main sequence all the way through World War I. So we're going to do main sequence with the main characters, picking them up after the Franco-Prussian War. I'm planning on doing kind of a North Africa, Middle Eastern adventure, and then a Mexican Old West, Western basically, and then a Japanese adventure, and then a World War I adventure, and then that is where the Carliad ends. The main sequence. There are books I have planned afterwards, including either an interbellum or World War II book. I don't know if I'm going to do it right away. I don't know if it's going to be connected with the series or if it's just going to be its own standalone thing. Obviously, most of the characters are going to be dead. Only the grandchildren of the main characters might be alive. I don't know if I'm going to connect it directly to, or just let it be its own thing. And then I have some other ideas. I have a American Revolutionary War book, that a concept that I have that I don't think anybody's ever done, and I think it's going to be great. I have a my own kind of French Revolution, Napoleonic War thing, that at least a novel that might become a series unto itself. We'll see how that goes. I'll write one book, and if people like it, I'll write more. But that could be a series that goes on and on for the rest of my life. I want to do a Haitian Revolution book. That is going to be I have a great concept. I'm fascinated with the Haitian Revolution. If you knew more about it, you'd be fascinated too. I have a great story that I'm going to do, and it's going to be tied with the history, but it's going to be a lover's triangle with history, and everybody is everybody's enemies. The blacks versus the half blacks versus the rich whites versus the poor whites versus the French, versus the Spanish versus the Americans versus the Spaniards. Everybody's fighting, man. Everybody's fighting everybody. And in it is going to be a very complex lovers triangle, but we're also going to tell the story. Papa Trisant was going to be in it. I think it might be one of the best books I've ever read in my life. I cannot wait to write that book. And then the other thing I have in mind is I want to go back to the early modern era, like the fall of Constantinople in the mid 1400s, and right on from there. And I also have an idea for a gritty crime novel in 1970s Detroit. We'll see, but that's so far off. I may not survive to write all that. So I have gone way longer. I thought, because this was an update, I was going to do a half hour and be done. I got 147 minutes so far. If you've listened this long, thank you very much. Please like and subscribe. Leave me a comment below. I'll answer it. And unless I get like 3,000, which I won't. Join my email list, and I love you guys. Keep reading, keep writing, and if I always say this, if there's an author that you like out there, it doesn't have to be me, but make sure you're giving those living authors, give them stars, 5 if you can, on Amazon, Goodreads, and anywhere else you can think of. And if you can, write a review. It doesn't have to be it could be like a sentence. I really liked it. Couldn't put it down. Well, maybe that's 2 sentences, but you know what I mean. All right, I love you guys. Have a good night, and I'll be back next week. I think I'm gonna wait till after I'm done with the 99 pence Perils of Perryville special in the UK, and then after that, I'm probably gonna do a reveal of the blurb for the Franco. The French Fiasco. So and we'll do that. We'll do that here too. We'll do a video about it. So anyway, I love you guys. Take care, and I'll talk to you soon.